Have you ever heard the saying, in for a penny, in for a pound? So last week I did a podcast on parenting strong versus submissive kids. And I thought if that wasn't controversial enough, I will do a podcast on marriage, strong versus submissive in marriage. And I think that there is so much error about what makes a strong marriage. And now more than ever, I think we need to talk about it. And we need to talk about it in an open way, and we need to talk about it in a way that is not fear-based. So, number one, I am writing a book. It's called Fundamentally Flawed: Letting Go of Fear Without Losing Faith. If you would like the first chapter of that for free, it's not finished yet. I'm in the process of writing it. But if you'd like that first chapter for free, then go to aprilbragg.com/book and you can get on the email list and get that. The church rightly wants to be an advocate for strong Christian families because divorce is a terribly painful solution to real problems. And sometimes the solution becomes even worse than the problem. What am I talking about? Like if we do not solve the unhappiness in a marriage and the couple splits up, then it becomes way more likely that their children are in danger in many different ways. They each themselves are in danger. They could get married to somebody who is even worse than their previous spouse. The children could be abused. The children can be neglected. It's more likely that both parties fall into poverty. It's more likely for depression to arise, anxiety to arise. There's a whole host of problems that comes when a family unit breaks apart. I'm saying all of this without judgment. I'm just pointing out real facts, real statistics. But also, the answer is not always that divorce should never be an option, because sometimes the situation in the home is untenable. It is not healthy. And one of the partners is not willing to work on it. So let's just realize that when we say divorce is not an option, we're not actually telling the truth. Divorce is an option. And divorce numbers have risen because it is an option, and it's a more viable option than it has been in previous centuries, okay? It's not just because of feminism. It's because we have all gotten economically more secure. So people realize it is an option and maybe I won't die if I take it. So that's just the reality of it. Now, what comes next is this. We think, well, if just one person will change, the whole marriage stay together. And then for some reason, we think that one person always should and has to be the wife. If the wife will submit enough, then the marriage will stay together. And we think that the marriage staying together is the goal. I want to say that the marriage staying together is not the goal. The goal is that the love of God be revealed and displayed in everyone's life. And for us to keep on thinking that the goal is to keep the marriage together at all costs, even if perhaps a husband is not displaying any love at all, is to go against God's intentions in marriage. Also, so then we say, well, submit and submit unto the Lord. And the more you submit, then it'll solve all the problems. Well, yeah, it'll solve the problem of getting a divorce, but doesn't solve the problem that created the problem in the first place. You see, submission cannot solve an abuse problem because submitting to an abuser just leads to more abuse. Boundaries can solve an abuse problem. Holding a person accountable can solve an abuse problem. Expecting the person to treat you with respect and as a daughter of the Most High King, that can solve an abuse problem. Leaving the abuse can solve an abuse problem. But submission to abuse just leads to more abuse. I'm going to give you an example of this. In fact, I just had this thought. Jesus voluntarily submitted to the abuse of the priests and of the Roman soldiers on his way to the cross. What did it end in? His death. Now, that's what submitting to abuse looks like. Now, why did Jesus do that? And why should we not take that as an example in our marriage? Number one, that was his mission. And he did it voluntarily, as in he said, you don't take my life from me. I am yielding it. I am giving it. And his abusers didn't realize that they were actually a part of his plan, actually. That had been his plan all along to give his life on the cross and to restore the relationship between us and his Father. But he also could have stopped it at any time and didn't. He could have called 10,000 angels to take him off that cross, to end it, and he chose not to. So when a woman is reaching out or a woman is saying, hey, there's trouble in my marriage, we need to not jump to the fast, quick, glib answer of, well, you probably need to submit and it'll all be better. Submit is not a giant Band-Aid that solves all problems. Now, submit does solve a few problems. I mean, it eases the way when two people have a difference of opinion. But what does help a marriage? Teaching both people to be strong. Teaching both people that they have value. Teaching mutual love, mutual submission, mutual respect. That will make a strong marriage. Submission cannot solve all the problems in a marriage. The working of the Holy Spirit can. And if the Holy Spirit is not working on the husband's side to love his wife as Christ loved the church, and we're expecting the Holy Spirit to only be working on the wife's side of put up with whatever it takes until the Holy Spirit decides to work on the husband's side, when he may not even be a Christian, you see how submission is just not going to work. So what does work? Well, realizing, number one, that holding the marriage together, no matter what, is not the most important thing. Number two, realizing that what actually is a better buffer against divorce is a strong, loving relationship, not a submissive to anything and everything relationship. Women who feel loved don't want to leave the relationship. Now, am I saying that if you don't feel loved, then go ahead and just leave the relationship? No, I'm not saying that either, because we're all going to go through times in our marriage when we don't feel loved, we don't feel seen, we don't feel appreciated. I mean, it's human nature that we have big gaping love holes in our heart that we turn to each other to fill. And when we ourselves are drained, we have nothing to give to the other person. That is why it's so helpful when we as believers learn to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love our neighbor as ourselves, as in our husband, our spouse as our neighbor. So if we go to God and we get all filled up on love, then it's easier to love the imperfect person sitting next to us. But if we're not going to God for love and we have a hole in our heart that needs some love to fill it, and we turn to this imperfect person who also has a hole in his heart and needs love to fill it, we are trying to draw from empty wells from each other. So this happens frequently in marriage because we're all humans and we all get distracted and we turn to each other instead of turning to God. So when we, in our neediness, go to another human being and their neediness, then it's not surprising that we're both feeling drained, we're both feeling tired, and we're both feeling like I'm not being supported And maybe the grass is greener on the other side. Grass is not greener on the other side. Any other grass greener on the other side is another needy human being who's got the same problem. But when we can switch it around, remind ourselves, go to God, become a whole person in myself. I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel loved because of my relationship to God. And I can show up as a whole person. Then when I'm relating to my spouse, I don't feel the need to get my meaning and my fulfillment from them. I can just look to them and see them as they are, just like me, a person who has flaws, who has good days, and who has bad days. That's what I'm talking about, a strong marriage. A strong marriage is this perspective that there will be good days and there will be bad days. A strong marriage is a marriage where when one falls down, the other one can pick them up. A strong marriage is one where you guys are cultivating common ground together to the point that you can talk about any difficult topic, knowing that it may be uncomfortable, it may not be pleasant, but the safety and security to be able to discuss anything is a strong marriage. We need to teach couples to have a strong marriage instead of just focusing on wives submitting to whatever the marriage is at that point. We need to teach husbands that loving your wife does not mean always doing what they want, and loving your wife does not mean always guessing at them and getting it wrong. But it's talking to them. It means that we see each other as real humans, real imperfect people. And a strong marriage has strong communication, number one. And by strong communication, I don't mean that you don't fight. I mean that you're willing to fight to get the point across if necessary. My husband and I just had a discussion, had not even a strong discussion. Neither of us were yelling or upset, but it was an emotional one because we were being vulnerable with each other. And he said something profound. He said, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation 10 years ago. And I totally agreed with him. I'm like, no, we would not have. I mean, we'd been upset and, would have caused distance for days. But that's what a strong relationship looks like. We can talk about the things that we weren't able to talk about before. We can talk about hard things. We know that on the other side of talking about those hard things is more love and deeper understanding. So strong communication, like we're going to keep on talking about until we figure it out. A strong marriage is not that both people agree on everything, but that they agree on the main thing. Like, what is the one most important thing to both of us? And do we both agree on that? And we're headed in that direction. A strong marriage does not mean there is no disagreement. It means that we know how to handle disagreement. It doesn't mean that there is no doubts. It means that we know how to handle the doubts. It doesn't mean that it's my way or the highway. It means we know how to carve a mutual way forward that is beneficial to the both of us. When we depend upon submission to solve all the problems of marriage, we are weakening the marriage and we are inviting abuse in. But when we look to both people and say, hey, make it stronger. You become stronger and your marriage will be stronger. You have healthy boundaries and it'll be a good thing for your spouse. You have better communication, even if it might feel painful for your spouse to hear the truth. Speak it in love, but speak the truth. You cannot build a strong marriage on lies. We cannot build a strong marriage on submitting one person to a bully. We cannot build a strong marriage on loving one person passively and letting them always have their way and never being actually part of the picture. Hiram and I are coming up on our 25th year of marriage, a quarter of a century, as in we have been married together for more years than not. And I find it fascinating to compare what I thought marriage was going to be like to what I know what marriage is like today. Somebody asked me recently, do you think that you and Hiram will always be married? We'll go the distance. We'll stay married. And it was a genuine question from a woman who had not seen a lot of marriages last at all. And I said to her, oh, 100%. Absolutely, I'm positive. And she said, how can you be so positive? And I said, number one, Hiram and I both love each other. And I am confident in his love, and I believe he's confident in my love. But I said, the second thing is because we both want the same thing, as in we both want a marriage that goes the distance. So because we're both wanting it, we're both investing in it. When two people are investing in the same thing and they want the same thing, what are the odds that they're going to get that same thing? Very great. Now, if only one of us was invested in it, what are the odds it's going to get there? Well, it depends. I mean, is the other person like, oh, yeah, that'd be nice? Or is the other person actively resisting against it? You can't drag somebody kicking and screaming to a finish line. Not unless you're much, much stronger than them. You have much, much more power over them. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Submission is not going to solve the divorce problem. Okay, because the divorce problem is caused by a lot of different things. But commitment to each person becoming strong and desiring the same end goal, the same goal at the end of the day, and showing up. But it took me a long time to realize this, that when I was relying upon trying to be the perfect submissive wife, I was not even giving Hiram a chance to love the real me. And that was not good for our marriage. But when I dared to show up authentically, vulnerably, imperfectly, he got a chance to show that he really, really does love the real me, that I don't have to be perfect for him to love me. That was a game changer for me. And it was also a game changer in my relationship with God. So I don't know which part of this video will resonate, but I hope you understand a couple of things. Number one, a strong marriage is a better guarantee against divorce than a submissive marriage. Also, what makes a strong marriage? A common end goal, communication, like being willing to talk about anything, and being strong each other, showing your true self, and basically daring the person to love the real you instead of the pretend you, as in honesty. Okay, and let me say one more thing. One person does have the ability to transform a relationship. Why do I say that? Because love itself is transformative, as in the way that God loved us first, we love him because he first loved us. That is transformative. We as humans are designed to respond to love. When just one person learns how to love better, the relationship is transformed. The person who learns how to love better receives the most benefit. But some people do still reject love, as in, even though God's love is perfect, some people still turn away from it. So if God's love isn't a compelling enough reason for everybody to join a relationship with him, then we need to stop believing that our love will always be a compelling enough motivation for somebody to stay in relationship with us. This is why I say when is divorce the best option? And it's when divorce is the loving option, as in it's the way that I show love to me and to you. And there is a time and there's a situation when that is loving, because it is not loving to allow somebody to continually sin against you. And so to be in an abusive situation and be told that the only answer is to submit to this, when no, sometimes the answer is to love them and tell them no and put boundaries on in the hopes that they will change. And if they do not change, hold them accountable for their actions. Because it is not loving to allow somebody to continually sin against another person. All of that to say, the way to make marriage go the distance is to have a strong marriage by strengthening both people, not by telling one person to submit to the other. All right. I hope this has helped. If you have any questions, message me. You can find me on Facebook at April Bragg, or drop a note in the comments below. Go to aprilbragg.com, join my newsletter, and you can send me a message through there. But let's aim for strong marriages, not merely submissive ones. Okay, bye-bye.